Dr. Elena Ward stood at the heart of her lab, surrounded by the soft hum of advanced machines. The sterile, metallic environment was a stark contrast to the chaos bubbling within her mind. For years, Elena had dedicated herself to the cutting edge of quantum physics, studying the nature of reality. Her breakthrough, the reality warp, had the potential to bend the fabric of existence, allowing humans to move across dimensions. The theory was groundbreaking, until tonight, it was just that, theory. Elena sighed, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls that hovered in the air before her. The familiar glow of the quantum core pulsed gently, ready for another round of tests. But today wasn't like the others. Something had shifted. She had noticed an anomaly in the system, something unusual, unexplainable. Her hands trembled as she prepared to dive deeper into what she discovered. The anomaly first appeared as a glitch, a blip of distorted energy during a routine test. But when she zoomed in on the readings, what she saw shook her to her core. Through the shimmering distortion, the faint outline of a figure had appeared. It was impossible. Yet, there it was. Sebastian. Her heart caught in her throat as the image wavered before vanishing altogether. Sebastian had disappeared 5 years ago under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind nothing but questions and a hollow space in her heart. She had tried to move on, pouring herself into her work. But now, seeing him, alive, or at least some version of him, Elena couldn't ignore it. She quickly rechecked the data. The anomaly was real, and it was a tear in the quantum fabric. It revealed an alternate dimension, one where Sebastian still existed. Elena leaned back, torn between disbelief and a desperate longing she thought she had buried long ago. The scientific community would shut her down if they knew about this. Reality manipulation was dangerous, unpredictable. They would label the tear as a threat and close it off. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. This was a chance, however slim, to reunite with the man she had lost. She felt a surge of determination. She would keep the discovery to herself, for now. If there was even the slightest chance that Sebastian was alive in another dimension, she had to explore it. "Elena, this is reckless," came the soft, robotic voice of Alex, her digital assistant, breaking the silence. This anomaly could destabilize the entire experiment. "I know the risks, Alex," she replied, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. "But I can't walk away from this." Elena began manipulating the controls, expanding the tear. The swirling energy grew, revealing more of the alternate dimension, a hazy, distant world just beyond her reach. As the rip in reality widened, she felt its pull, like gravity drawing her in. "I'm going through," Elena whispered, more to herself than to Alex. And then, without hesitation, she stepped into the unknown. Elena stumbled as she crossed the threshold into the alternate dimension. The air felt heavier, denser, as if the molecules here vibrated on a different frequency. She steadied herself and looked around, trying to take in her surroundings. The world was strangely familiar, yet undeniably different. She stood in the middle of a sprawling city, much like her own but with subtle, jarring variations. The buildings were taller, their edges sharper, the sky an unnatural shade of violet. Hovering vehicles zipped overhead in perfect synchronization, their soft hum merging with the buzz of life around her. People moved quickly, with the same sense of purpose she was used to, but something about them felt off. Their faces were calm, too calm, as if every emotion had been smoothed out. Elena shook her head, focusing on the task at hand, finding Sebastian. She reached for the small device strapped to her wrist, a prototype built to help her navigate the unfamiliar terrain. The device pinged softly, and a faint trail of light appeared in front of her, leading her through the city streets. She followed it with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, her heart pounding in her chest. After what felt like hours, the trail led her to a quiet, secluded workshop at the edge of the city. The sign above the door flickered, displaying a name she could barely read, but it didn't matter. She knew this place. She had seen it in her dreams, in fleeting memories of conversations with Sebastian about his work. Her breath caught as the door slid open, revealing a man bent over a holographic table, engrossed in his work. Sebastian. He was older now, with a few more lines etched into his face, but it was him, his posture, the way he frowned in concentration, the familiar curve of his shoulders. Elena stepped forward, her voice trembling. Sebastian? He looked up, startled, his eyes narrowing as he took her in. Do I know you? The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Of course, he wouldn't recognize her. This wasn't the Sebastian she had known, the one she had loved. This was a different version of him, a man from a parallel reality where she didn't exist. But seeing him, alive, breathing, real, was enough to crack open the walls she had built around her heart. I'm Elena, she managed, her voice shaky. From another world. Sebastian's expression shifted from confusion to something deeper, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, though he didn't know why. Another world, he asked cautiously, taking a step back. I've been working on interdimensional travel, but, you're saying you've crossed over? Elena nodded. Yes. I came here because of you. In my world, we were together. He stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. I don't know what you're talking about, he said finally, his voice tight. But you need to leave. This is dangerous, whatever you've done, you've crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Elena's heart sank. She had come all this way, risked everything, and the man she had been searching for was a stranger. But she couldn't give up, not yet. I'm not leaving, she said quietly. Not without you. The world around Elena was beginning to fall apart. Tiny, imperceptible shifts had started to occur ever since she crossed into this dimension, but now, they were becoming impossible to ignore. Time itself seemed to stutter and loop in places. People walking in the streets would suddenly vanish, only to reappear seconds later, continuing as if nothing had happened. Buildings flickered between their current state and ghostly versions of themselves, as if reality itself was unraveling. In the workshop, Sebastian paced nervously, running a hand through his hair. This can't keep happening, he muttered. You've brought something into this world that's destabilizing everything. If it continues, both our realities could collapse. Elena stood by the window, watching the strange flickers ripple through the city. A deep sense of guilt gnawed at her, but she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision to cross over. I didn't know it would be this bad, she whispered. I thought I could find you. Sebastian stopped pacing and turned to face her. And now that you've put both universes at risk. We don't have much time before the tear you created becomes irreversible. His words were harsh, but Elena could see the concern in his eyes. He didn't fully understand the bond they had shared in her dimension, but something in him, some deep, buried part, seemed to recognize her. She could see it in the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. We can fix this, Elena said, trying to sound confident. You've been working on interdimensional travel. Together, we can stabilize the tear and stop the collapse. Sebastian hesitated, his brow furrowing. Even if we manage to stabilize the tear, it's not that simple. The more time you spend here, the more entangled you become with this dimension. You're like a foreign object in a system that can't accommodate you. If we don't act fast, your presence could cause a total rupture in the multiverse. Elena swallowed hard, her throat tight. So, what do we do? We have to shut down the reality warp in both dimensions, Sebastian explained. Simultaneously. If we synchronize the shutdown, we might be able to seal the tear without causing a full collapse. And if we don't? The tear will expand until both dimensions implode, Sebastian said grimly. Everything will cease to exist. Elena's heart sank. She hadn't anticipated this level of danger. She'd been so focused on finding Sebastian that she hadn't considered the wider consequences. But now, faced with the potential destruction of not just one world but two, she knew what had to be done. "I'll go back," she said quietly. "I'll return to my dimension and shut down the reality warp. You can do the same here." Sebastian's gaze softened. "Are you sure? Once you go back, there's no guarantee we'll ever see each other again." Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The thought of losing Sebastian again, after everything, was unbearable. But she had no choice. "I'm sure," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's the only way to save both of our worlds." Back in her own dimension, the lab felt colder, emptier. The reality warp's hum had been silenced, the tear between worlds sealed. Elena stood in the dim light of her lab, staring at the spot where the gateway to Sebastian's world had been. Her fingers hovered over the controls, but there was nothing more to do. It was over. The moment she returned, she had initiated the shutdown. Across the multiverse, Sebastian would have done the same. The tear had closed, stabilizing both dimensions, but at a devastating cost. The two worlds were once again isolated from each other, and Sebastian, her Sebastian, was now unreachable. The ache in her chest was profound, but she had saved both realities. That had to be enough. Still, the silence in the lab was unbearable. The world outside carried on as it always had, unaware of the cataclysm they had narrowly avoided. But for Elena, everything had changed. She had found him, only to lose him again. And this time, there was no hope of ever getting him back. She sank into her chair, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. Alex, her digital assistant, broke the silence. "The tear has been sealed. Multiversal stability is confirmed." The cold efficiency of Alex's voice did nothing to soothe her. It only underscored the finality of her actions. Elena stared at the console in front of her, the blinking lights mocking her with their meaningless patterns. She had risked everything for love, only to find herself alone once again. But as she sat in the quiet of the lab, she realized something. Despite the loss, despite the heartbreak, the connection she had felt with Sebastian, across time, space, and reality, was real. It wasn't something that could be erased by a shutdown. Suddenly, a soft chime broke through her thoughts. The device on her wrist, the one she had used to track the tear between dimensions, flickered to life. A faint glow pulsed from its screen, an anomaly, small but unmistakable.